A very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. This is New Day, Saturday edition. It is the 17th day of February 2018. We thank God for how far He has brought us into the new year. We're coming to you live from the studios of TV3 here in Accra. We're also live on 3FM 92.7. And we're streaming online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. The show runs from now till 9:50, where we draw curtains on the show. We encourage you, as usual, to send through your comments, your contributions, your remarks to our WhatsApp number 050-0607-070, and we will be happy to, as much as we can, share them with the rest of the world as we go on with the program. Today, we have a number of issues to look at, a little bit of international matters and, of course, our local issues that have panned out during the week. We'll be looking at the special prosecutors, the vetting of the nominee for the office of the special prosecutor. Now this week, the much-awaited showdown between the nominee for the office of the president, that is Mr. Martin Amidu, and the Appointments Committee of Parliament finally came off, and it was actually on Tuesday, the 13th of February 2018. Now this meeting was quite a lengthy one. It spanned a period of some good 7 hours, and it was quite interesting to watch. I mean, some have described it as perhaps the thriller in Manila. I mean, that showdown was quite an interesting one. We'll be looking at some details of that. Now, Mr. Martin Amidu's appearance before the committee has, been met with a number of reactions. Some have described his demeanor in various ways. We'll be looking at that, whether indeed those qualities that people have ascribed to him are indeed the right mix of qualities we are looking for the occupant of the office of the special prosecutor. So on the show this morning, we'll be looking at the vetting of Mr. Martin Amidu and matters arising. We'll also look at the special petroleum tax reduction, and we do know that after some agitation by some civil society and trade union groups, government finally decided to further reduce the special petroleum tax by 2%. So the tax currently has dropped from 15% to 13%. You do recall that the special petroleum tax was levied or is levied on petroleum products. After all, other taxes are considered in the price build-up of petroleum products, and that the special petroleum tax started originally at 17.5% and saw a reduction, 2% reduction last year in this government's first budget, which was christened the Asempa budget. Now, Parliament this week passed the Special Petroleum Tax Amendment Bill to reduce the tax from 15% to 13%. We shall be looking at this development and consider the impact the reduction is likely to have on consumers and indeed the economy as a whole. Also up for discussion it's a very important subject. We are looking at the increasing spate of accidents on our roads. Now, Thursday, the 15th of February this year marked exactly 6 years since the inauguration of the N1 highway, also known as the George Walker Bush Motorway. Now, since the commissioning of the highway, some 295 persons have lost their lives on the highway. The promise of footbridges has not been fulfilled, and people continue to lose their lives. People continue to get maimed on this highway. Now, as part of TV3's production to mark the day, a 30-minute documentary was put together. The documentary highlights a number of issues, including the plight of victims and the unfulfilled promises, coupled with the challenges of institutions within the roads and traffic sector, such as the National Road Safety Commission. On the show this morning, we shall be looking at some of the highlights in this 30-minute documentary. Also, we'll be looking at some matters happening internationally, particularly in South Africa. Now, torn between stepping down as President of the Republic of South Africa and facing a vote of no confidence in Parliament, Mr. Jacob Zuma, the immediate past President of South Africa, chose the former. He resigned on Wednesday this week after surviving numerous impeachment attempts and various scandals. For those who thought Jacob Zuma had 9 lives, finally his 9 lives ran out. He could not survive the pressure from his own party, the African National Congress, ANC. Now, in the year 2008, when the ANC recalled President Thabo Mbeki, that was the first of its kind. The ANC has done it again with the recall of Jacob Zuma, which led to his resignation. Now, the second time, the ANC has recalled a sitting president, making it impossible for the president to finish their term in office. With Zuma's resignation, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, deputy president and leader of the ANC, was sworn in as president of South Africa to complete, as it were, Zuma's term in office, which is barely a year to go. On the show this morning, we shall be looking at the happenings in South Africa, whether or not there are some lessons to be drawn for our own fledgling democracy in Ghana, and indeed the impact on the African continent. We'll take a break at this point. When we come back, I'll introduce a panelist and we'll dig straight into the conversations. You're watching NewDay, Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to NewDay Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and live around the world on 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. I'll quickly introduce the panelists for today's conversations. From my extreme left, I have Kojon Safwa Poku. He is an energy expert. Next is Edward Bauer. He is the Honourable Member of Parliament for Bongo constituency in the Upper East region. Next, we have Kwame Jantwa. He is a member of the CPP and the immediate past vice chairperson of PIAC. Last but not least is Kofi Abrefa Afena. He is a member of the NPP communications team. Good morning, gentlemen,
good morning.
and
good morning.
Welcome to the show.
I'm
very
well.
Valentine's Day.
Yes.
Thank you very much, and the same to you.
At least this morning, your panel is well balanced. You will not be
Is it?
criticized of being a biased presenter because your show never have an NDC person on there. You know,
Never
a couple
had?
of weeks ago, no, a couple of weeks ago, you know the comments that came.
Oh yes, okay, very well. Oh yes.
And
what
No,
was
but
the reason?
The reason, well, we never got representation from your side, but
Davis
we
never came.
did reach out. You know, we always do. We will never have this without. We
all
always do. But anyways,
So today,
it does. It does.
Today, at least the viewers,
It does.
the viewers will be very happy.
It does. Within the context we operate in, we have to
it
always
means
have
the
that.
viewers
It's
will be
very
very happy.
important.
Today I'll be giving some preferential treatment.
Yes, but very well. Let's get to it because, you know, as usual, so much to talk about, but very limited time. So we'll get straight onto it. Now, this week, specifically Thursday, 15 February, marked exactly 6 years since the commissioning of the N1 highway, N1 also known as the George Walker Bush motorway. Now, there's been a number of incidents on the highway. I mean, lots of carnage. In all, about 95 persons have lost their lives. And TV3 put together a documentary on this issue to mark the 6th anniversary by Portia Gabo. And we will be showing some snippets of that documentary to launch our conversation into road accidents, specifically looking at the N1 highway since its commissioning. So let's take a look and then we come back to the panel.
In 2008, Ghana's then President John Agyekum Kufuor decided to name a future 6-lane highway after a president of the United States of America.
Mr. President, in appreciation of your many kind gestures towards Ghana and other parts of Africa, and to immortalize your goodwill to us, my government has decided to name this road, this very strategic road, after you. Henceforth, it will be called the George Bush Motorway.
And I really appreciate the George Bush Motorway. The next time I come and ride on the George Bush motorway, I promise that we will not shut the highway down.
On 15th February 2012, the 14.1-kilometer George Walker Bush Highway, also referred to as the N1 Highway, was officially opened to motorists.
I am happy for two main reasons. The first one is that President Agyekum Kufuor agreed to be here this afternoon. As you know, he initiated this project. They started and we finished it. The important thing is that it is a Ghana project.
The motorway is expected to facilitate the movement of more than 36,000 vehicles per day and reduce peak time travel from 1 hour to 20 minutes.
Funded by the US government's Millennium Challenge Corporation at a cost of $175 million, the purpose of the highway was to address the bottleneck on portions of the stretch which caused delay of exports and imports, especially at Malam Junction. 6 years after its construction, the joy that came with the commissioning of the highway has turned to tears of sorrow for families who have lost loved ones. One-year-old Isaac Nyamu was a young adult with special needs who wanted to make a difference in society. He died while crossing the Abekala Pass section of the N1 highway on 18th June 2017.
We are straight there. Off. Traffic light red. She no need to U-turn. No.
The main traffic light was indicating red, but the traffic light by the U-turn was indicating green.
Full speed, top speed, me, when they about U-turn, it's a slow. She can speed and we can do.
People were crossing. My son was the last to cross. A car at top speed approached suddenly and hit him.
She didn't in a U-turn on the U-turn. They for me. When you say they come for me. She speed no, not the woman for me. Slow her down. She went to a highway near Bells and try it.
It's not me who got to say what is happening at that very spot, because everybody knows, and even the top men, they know what is happening there. They have to do something about it. They have to do something about it. You know, at least you guys get a record. Since the George Walker Bush motorway when it was completed, see the accidents which has been happening there. What are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? We still wait for people to lose their kids, people to lose their family, keep on losing their family before we take action. At least 1, 2, 3. We have to know that what is happening there. We have to do something about it. Now they don't care. But why? Just want to know why.
On 21st July 2017, Isaac's funeral was held at the Calvary Baptist Church in Accra.
But this young man, it does not matter how old he lives, he may have died in accident, but his soul and spirit is with the Lord. Therefore, me as a pastor, I will cry and I will say thank you to Jesus. Don't make a
Isaac is not the only one to have lost his life on the George Walker Bush Highway. Statistics from the Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service show as at December 2017, 295 persons alone died on the highway. Over 3,000 road crashes have occurred on the highway, injuring 1,876 persons. I decided to embark on a journey to find out what the causes of road crashes on the highway are and what could be done to prevent needless deaths and road crashes.
Yeah, so that was some highlights of that documentary by Portia Gabo. Thanks to Portia for that good job, and indeed stark statistics coming out of that documentary. 295 lives lost as of the end of December last year. Very, very, very disturbing indeed. Now, we will go into this conversation, but I would want to make reference, in addition to what we've just seen as the launch pad into the conversation, a news article that was put together, by I think the Ghana News Agency, just 3 weeks after the commissioning of the highway. They also saw it coming. Now, this is, I'm quoting them, that was in March, on the March 16th, 2012, and they're saying that more than a dozen lives have already been lost since the commissioning of the N1 highway, also called the George Walker Bush motorway, in the national capital Accra about 3 weeks ago. So just after 3 weeks of the commissioning, more than 12 lives lost. And then it goes on to say that now if you multiply this by the number of weeks in a year, you can imagine what would happen by the end of 2012 if appropriate measures are not taken to curb the carnage on the highway. And 6 years down the lane, we're hearing of 295 lives lost. That is lost. We have the incidents of people being maimed, injuring beyond, certain levels and all of that. Quite disturbing. The question then is, what will be the tipping point? If 295 lives lost isn't scary enough to wake us up from our nightmare, then what will? Honorable Bauer, start us off with this. If 295 lives isn't enough to get us, you know, up and going, then what could? What could? I mean, I have a lot of them here, so we would just be pulling them out as we go on. But this is what we have.
Okay. Good morning to your viewers. And based on what you were telling me off stage, that for some time NDC people have not been coming here, I'm happy that today I'm given the opportunity to come and be by an independent thinker who is seen as an MPP man. but to a more serious issue. Yes. Yesterday, when your producer decided to give me the synopsis for this particular topic, I looked at the figures myself and I was a bit scared to have, in 6 years, 295 people dying. I'm told that 795 pedestrians knocked down since the inauguration, over 3,000 road crashes, injuring about 1,876. So if you see these figures, you get worried. As to what the situation, if you look at that road, it's just a replica of what happens in other roads. It's just that this one looks a bit more pronounced. Yeah. Indeed, if you look at the Nsawam Adosu Road, it's also one area that has a serious problem when it comes to accidents. And it is, yes, I'll come to the design, but it has to do with our general attitude as human beings in Ghana. That setting basic rules is when you want development and you decide to imbibe some developmental initiatives, you must also go with it, the precautions that come with it. So, for example, if you want good roads, you must also know that with good roads, you must have certain behavior to be able to ensure that you stay alive. And so when we take up these things and we do not accompany it with our behaviors, we have some of these challenges. But of course, a greater part of it is that sometimes when you are also designing settings for your people, you must anticipate that not everybody will think rightly. And therefore, such people must also be defended, because it's the duty of the state to ensure that they keep people alive. I do know that after the commissioning, people had spoken about it, because immediately after that you had accidents, and I think one of the articles you made that. I know that in somewhere around 2014, just when we were 14, 15, when we entered into the World Bank, the IMF challenges, it was also at the time when Patrick Boama spoke about it in Parliament, because you know he's
in his constituency.
Patrick Boama spoke about those things, and government decided to pick up the issues. I know that the then Ministry of Roads and Highways tried looking at possibility of having footbridges. So designs were made, it was costed, and they needed to get money for it. Unfortunately, the Ministry of Finance at that time had gone into the IMF program, and the IMF program indicated that you could not go for commercial loans. All loans had to be concessionary. That means that there must be a grant component to it. And that was also very challenging for us, particularly at the time when we were a middle level income country, because when you attain that, getting concessionary loans becomes a challenge. So that was one of the problems that they had. So that is still on the drawing board as part of measures to correct the initial defects in the design. Because if you look at the road architecture, you have a situation where you do not have such a long stretch going through neighborhoods. Not having footbridges in there was
which is quite interesting or quite worrying, that for such a major project being situated within such an area, it would have come without footbridges. So then you look at the thought process, what went into the design. Clearly something went amiss. And this is the first, this came under the first compact we had with the US government, right? So, I mean, well, it's a good thing, but definitely there were some inadequacies.
Ordinarily, if you have traveled around, highways, motorways, do not go through neighborhoods. They don't. You understand? So to have such situations meant that we needed to do something different. We needed to think out of the box, not just take a project from, because for the Americans, they will know that you are building a highway that is going from point A to point B. If you bring the design, they may not criticize, because they may have these challenges of they themselves having highways do not go through neighborhoods of that nature. But there was another thing, and when I was listening to your clip that you played, you know, one of the gentlemen talked about traffic lights. that the traffic lights, at one point, the traffic lights were not working and things like that. I do know that that was one of the major problems that the place had. You know that most of our traffic lights have situations when the lights are off, they also stop working. Even though we have some who will just be doing the amber, for God knows, the blinking for God knows how long. As one of the measures to curb these things, I do know that under the INUSA time in the Ministry of, Ministry of Roads and Highways, they worked with the Ministry of Energy to get standalone traffic lights. So if you look at those traffic lights on the N1, they are powered by solar.
So that they are independent
so they are off the grid. Saying that at the end of the day, you can get that sorted. But I think that from these statistics, I mean, I believe that research is always meant to give policymakers an opportunity to relook at that. I mean, there's no money and quantum of money that is worth the life of a human being. So to have, to the extent of 295 people dying in 6 years, it is important that we find the money to build those bridges.
Right, very well. Let me go to Mr. Jantua here and then quickly to the others. Your views on this: 295 lives lost, many others maimed, injured in various categories. How do you see this? And obviously, it's quite worrying. Now, we're being told that right from the onset, the design didn't have, footbridges in mind. Because really, the problem with the N1, aside the car crashes, predominantly you have issues about people getting knocked down because of the lack of the footbridges, or that they are situated in certain areas that, far away, people cannot necessarily walk to them to access them. So they would rather cross over the barriers that have been erected there, which in itself is quite, irresponsible on the part of the people who do that. But of course, going deeper, if you dig deeper, the answer is, well, we don't have the footbridges easily to access.
Abna, good morning. Good morning to my fellow panelists, and good morning to our viewers. Abna, let me start with some statistics, and I wouldn't only want to concentrate on the N1.
Definitely not, yeah.
Death on the road is death on the road. You've lost lives. The statistics show that 43% of fatalities involve pedestrians, 53% involved occupants in vehicles, 23% were children aged under 16. And the major cause of road accidents in Ghana is due to overspeeding. That is the major cause. If cars were going at 30 miles per hour, they'll be able to stop early enough for people to cross. I'm not saying that
they should be
going across, but at least that speed limit would be controlled. The other challenge we have is tires, the kind of tires on the cars. Drivers driving tired. The fact that we have cars that are not roadworthy and they are broken down on the main roads. If you look at the causes, you then ask yourself, what are the laws that govern these things? Are we enforcing the laws? And if you're not enforcing the laws, why aren't we enforcing the laws? On the N1, I think it's a mentality thing that Ghanaians have. I think there must be a change in the mindset of Ghanaians. Because before that road was built, it was what, a single lane? People were still crossing. And I'm not sure whether effective education was done when the road was built in terms of how that road should be treated with pedestrians. If you remember, when they finished building that road, there were very or non-existent bypasses on that road. The cry came because there were lots of accidents on the road, and they started putting some of these on the road. But they put them at distances that the people wouldn't walk across. You then ask the question, were the people in the community consulted? I think there was Bawa or was Kojo who made the point that these roads are going through communities. Would we then probably say that we should not have the type of roads that we have on the N1, but we should have overhead roads like we've got at Circle, where people can easily cross? But that too, you're talking huge amounts of money to build those types of roads. However, you could build them in phases, couldn't you? There's certain points where we'll be up, there's certain points where we'll be down, which prevents people. How many people have you seen cross that overhead in Circle? Hardly any. So
isn't it because there's an alternative to that, which is the appropriate measures have been put in place to help them do the crossing over, so that if it's provided, then people would resort to that. But if there's none, then people would find ways and means.
And that's the point I'm making. Because if you give an alternative which is safer, people will use the alternative. The topography of the area too is very important. How is it situated? The geography of the area, how is it situated? What kind of communities do you have in that area? But if you look at that area, when you start from, let's say, Dimples, going forward, most of the things in that area in terms of communities are businesses, not people's residential homes. As you go further and you get into La Paz, you find the concentration of people. So perhaps when we get to La Paz, it should have been an overhead so that it just crosses over and people can use the underbit to cross. So the planning of it is key. The one thing I find about Ghanaian engineers is that they tend to stay in the office more than be on the ground. Now, once upon a time, in one of my lives, I used to be in the roads industry. I used to mark roads. I used to do road signs. I used to do crash barriers and all these things. Hardly ever did an engineer come to inspect my work. Hardly ever. So I can be using a thermoplastic paint that is not meant for that road.
I hope you didn't know.
Yeah, I didn't. I didn't. The thermoplastic paint, you have cold thermoplastic and you have hot thermoplastic. And for our roads, you either have extrusion or you have spray. The spray doesn't last because of the type of roads we have, but the extrusion comes with a certain quantum of thickness. And so when you put it on the road, it falls on the road like a ribbon, and so it lasts. With the spray, it doesn't last. And very soon, what you find is that because of the sun's heat and because of, the road's not done properly, you get bleeding on the road, and the bleeding now, that's the bleeding of the bitumen, now covers the markings. And all these things cause problems at night, especially. I don't know, and probably Bawa or Kojo or my brother here will be able to tell me, what times of the day on that road do accidents happen? Is it at night? Is it during the day? Is it in the morning? We need those statistics to be able to make sure that we solve the challenge. Because, as you said, it's 295 this year.
As of December last year.
After December last year. It's a high number.
It is.
It's a high number. We need to be able to situate the times that these accidents happen and find measures to hold them. Now, there are a lot of unemployed people, especially the youth. Should we not have marshals or wardens on the streets, not only to stop people from crossing, but also to educate? Where you have huge incidents of accidents, these are information vans. Should they not be plying those roads every day, advising people? You get early in the morning, these preachers who go on, they sit in cars and loudspeakers, ranting and raving the gospel, waking everybody up at night. Could we not probably use those information vans to educate people? Should we not go into the marketplaces to educate people in schools?
Right.
It has to start from somewhere. The seed has to be sown somewhere to be able to stop this kind of canker. But most of all, the vehicles on the road. The vehicles on the road. Sometimes you see it's been heaped high. A policeman is standing there, but the car just moves off.
Right. I mean, which takes me into the next, area for us to look at, or the question, and that's to you, Kojo. Clearly, it's a multifaceted issue. A number of factors leading to these things, and definitely bringing on board or bringing into the fray a number of institutions or stakeholders. You're looking at the individual citizen, you're looking at state institutions, such as, the National Road Safety Commission, because they have a responsibility. You're looking at DVLA, Mr. Janta talked about the status or the state of cars. And you're looking at the police, MTTU, for instance, and many others. There needs to be some collaboration here. Ministry of Roads and Highways and all other stakeholders. How do we get this working?
Well,
Good morning, and good morning to the viewers as well. I think it's mostly to do, I'll put it down to education. Okay, yes, there's been defects in the design. It was the same also on the Tetekwashi to Adenta Road. We realized that there was no footbridges on that one. The pillars at the Zongo Junction and the Adenta end are there. But you realize that to construct it, they didn't take into consideration where the stairs and stuff will come, because then they would have to break some buildings to actually construct the footbridge, and I think they abandoned it. So if you are driving, you see that the pillars for the footbridge on the Tetekwashi to Adenta, you see the pillars are there, but the footbridge is not there.
Now that brings in the question, why do we hesitate, or why are we reluctant to do the right thing, even if it means, you know, in the meantime, like you're saying, there are certain buildings that need to be demolished in order for us to do this?
But then you see, then in Ghana now, building a road, the compensation component of the road construction becomes so huge that you forgo certain parts of the road. Because I think on the N1, the compensation paid, because the Americans gave us a certain set of money to build the road. So I think that when the compensation part of it became so huge, that I'm thinking the money for the overheads, the footbridges, was not available. Okay, because if you look at the, like I'm saying, the Tetekwashi one, but the NDC came in and I think they did the two bridges at the mall. I think the mall, there's two of them. What they call that place? Is it Balishi?
No, that's that's been to Spana Junction.
No, yes, Spana Junction. Yeah. They did that one, and they did the mall one, the one crossing from the African region to the mall, and the one where they did those two.
Yes,
and you realize that it's really helped because you have nobody crossing the road at that junction now. I think if we do similar for the N1, it will reduce that human crossing over. Because look, let's be honest with ourselves. It's a highway. Highways, by stipulation, have certain speed limits, a car has to go. If I don't go that speed, by I'm breaking the law. Now, if you are on a congested road, obviously you cannot do those speeds. One of the things I want to take this opportunity to also educate some drivers is that when you see a 3-lane, I think highways are new to our culture in Ghana. Anytime you see a 3-way highway,
are they?
Well, 3 ways. There's quite the 3-way. There are 3 lanes. The first one on your left is a speeding lane. Do not drive in that lane slowly.
If you go 30,
if you're doing 30, be in the right lane. Yeah. The middle lane, you can be there, nobody will matter. But the left lane is for overtaking.
It's a speed lane.
In Britain, if you stay in there more than necessary, you'll be fined and arrested, because you overtake and come back to the middle lane or the right lane. You find out that people will argue with you when you point out to them that, my brother, come off the speed lane, because the 3rd lane, and I think it's lack of education, that a lot of people do not know that when you have 3 lanes, the 3rd lane to your left is an overtaking lane. You do not stay. Somebody will be driving in there quietly, as if that is, and all these pure ice, the big trucks, everybody is in that lane. Then it's forcing you to now zigzag them, because you have to overtake this one, come in this way, overtake, and those exactly, and that is what caused a lot of our accidents. So a little bit of education to the people. When you see somebody, or you're in a car and the trotro or the tipper truck or is in the left lane, please advise them that you're supposed to be in the right lane or the middle lane. Leave that lane for people who wants to overtake and move further.
Talking about education, now, you know, the National Road Safety Commission was set up specifically to, among others, do these things, road safety education and all of that. Some people have complained about them, but then there are also issues about, or genuine issues about, lack of resources for the commission to do its work. So isn't it time we put our money where our mouth is?
Well, I think in the ministries, you know, we have MDAs, ministry, department, and agencies. I think when ministries does their budget, it doesn't trickle down to the agencies. If you go to every ministry, its agencies are abandoned. And you see,
so we can only be talking then. I mean,
yes, because you know, there's a minister recently who said that, oh, he's only a policy minister, and if people are saying that he's not doing well, he's only there to do policy. Look, if you are not going down to see what your agencies are doing, they're not doing a good job, because you run ministry, department, and agencies. And I can name so many agencies within various ministries that when you go there, In the regions especially, people don't even come to work. I mean, I went to Kumasi to an agency. The place was shut. For 2 days, I went there, the place was shut, and they tell me, oh, omo mau. But they collect their salaries. So we've run down our agencies, and they are not functioning. And you see, for the policy being made by the ministry, is the agencies that implements them. And
if we're not resourcing them, then clearly from the word go, we didn't intend to effect any change there, because then it's only at the top.
That is the broken system.
Exactly.
That we have.
So how do we? And that's if you're done, then I just move to.
Let me just ask you a
quickly.
question.
Yes.
How much will it take to educate people on that N1 route? These are people who have been receiving salaries for God knows how long. You can't just zero it down to resources. It's about our priorities. Yes. That's all.
Exactly. I mean, that's the point.
Towards work.
That's the point. I mean, if it's our priority to fix this, then we'll put our money there. So clearly, it's an indication that we don't value lives, and I think that's the argument people consistently have.
Some people that the person at the top doesn't think that he needs to pay a visit to the agency. The minister thinks that his work is to just be in the ministry, not to go to the agency.
Let me quickly go to Kofi. Yes, quickly.
Quick education. How many drivers understand the markings on the roads? So let me use this platform to educate them.
Quickly,
when you're driving on the road and you see a continuous white line, it means you cannot overtake. You only overtake when it is clear.
Or you cannot change lanes.
You cannot change it. When you see a double line in the center of the road, you cannot overtake at all. The only time you can overtake is when you have intermittent lines. Broken lines. That's the only time you can overtake. And not a lot of people understand these things. And so sometimes when you're driving and somebody's overtaken and you tell them you can't do that, they think you're crazy.
So clearly, a problem with institutions, because you have the DVLA, who's, I mean, responsible for these things. You're looking at cars again, because like I said, there are mechanical factors to road accidents. I mean, the state of cars and all of that. You see a broken down, I mean, a dilapidated vehicle on the road, smoking like nobody's business, and it just and you know, you raise these issues, and it's like, yeah, I mean, it happens all the time. What's the problem?
The question of ties.
Your perspective on this, really, because for me, it's beyond dire, this situation.
First of all, let me say a very good morning to our viewers at home, and I must say it's a sad morning, especially looking at the documentary you just shown, and the fact that just last week we've had to lose Ebony Rains, a brilliant young talent, through road accident. The point is, there seems to be a certain convergence of thoughts around the table that there is a certain systemic failure. I mean, in terms of the things that we ought to do as a nation. Amid the excitement of the N1 highway construction, I mean, we thought that it was a project that is going to link, you know, various parts of Accra, you know, having all its business connotations. And I mean, the statistics are so scary. I mean, just until December 2017, we have 295 people dying, and it is scary. I largely agree with Mr. Kwame Jantua, who says that we need to, you know, address the holistic matter of road accidents. And I'm happy that, you know, he and other discussants talks about education. It will shock you that most drivers, especially commercial drivers, do not even know basic road signs and, you know, signages on our roads, and it's a problem. It's a problem. So this is a matter, you know, that needs to be looked at holistically. I think that this is not an MPP and DC matter. You know, like matters have been clouded in this country. I think that you know, a single life lost is worth a lot, and we need to do more as a people. And I am particularly following one gentleman who is called Gabiadu Jemfi, who is, you know, if you like, a self-appointed road ambassador. Road safety ambassador, exactly, who is going out there educating people about road safety and all that, ostensibly to augment what is supposed to be done by the National Road Safety Commission and all that. So I think that the convergence of thought is critical. It is a systemic problem. the N1 highway amid the excitement is rather, causing us to lose lives, which is a problem, and we need to look at it. And I am really particular about the Aoshi traffic light intersection and the Chimota overpass. That place has really...
That's the Apenkwa overpass.
Absolutely.
I believe
that place has really been the black spot, if you like. And as we mark the anniversary, if you like, of the coming into force of this important project, I think that we need to look at it. And I am aware, as the president bemoaned this particular situation of road accidents in the SONA, I'm aware that the Roads and Highways Ministry is really, on the ground and trying to consult with the necessary stakeholders for us to really address the problem on the N1 highway. Because several accidents, and it's really a problem. And I think that we need to do this as a nation, because one life lost is worth a lot as far as the socio-economic development of our country is concerned.
Very well, thank you. So beyond the convergence of thoughts, we need to act.
The president tweeted 2 days ago that he's asked the road and highway minister, the interior minister, and one other minister to come up with a roadmap for. So he tweeted that like 2 days ago.
He's the one managing his
very well. Yes. Quickly, then we need to take a break, but I need to take messages.
Let me say something about education. I have realized, working at the Ministry of Energy, where a lot of projects come through, you have project designs, even in terms of even just designing it, that they do not even incorporate in it issues of communication. Issues of conscientization.
It's always an afterthought.
It's always an afterthought. And I believe this particular project was equally same. Because people, when it was a single lane, as you said, we're not getting these days. Because the cars were going slower and the people were used to crossing. So now a new one comes and they still think that they must have their own habits.
It's easier to cross a one lane
so it's
than
it's about how you package the whole program, the whole project. And it's something.
Very well. Just quickly then, yes, we take a break.
I know. As I said, it's a multifaceted issue, and we need to look at it. As he rightly said, the president has directed this interministerial partnership specifically to look at accidents in general. Accidents in general, not just N1 highway. As I'm saying, it's an issue that we are looking at from various angles, and we will get to the bottom of this. This president has demonstrated his commitment to...
There we go. That's fine. Let me take some messages. Just a minute. Allow him. Wait a minute. Allow him. No. Mr. Ganta, allow him. You have 30 seconds to wrap up, please.
This president has demonstrated commitment to all sectors of the economy of Ghana. And that is what I'm talking about.
Very well. Thank you very much. That's fine.
Absolutely. We are incapable.
Let me put the cat amongst the pigeons.
Go ahead.
Kofi said it's not an MPP NDC thing. It is.
But it shouldn't be.
It shouldn't be, but it is. They've been in power for how long? This problem should have been sorted out by now.
Well, that's
what
true.
What have they done about it? All these institutions we're talking about, doesn't it come under a particular government?
It does.
And what have they done to enforce it?
That's where we are at, and we hope some change happens. But let me take some messages quickly, and then we go for our first break. Now, this one says, Abna, good morning to you and your guest. Drivers in Ghana, including the president's convoy, don't respect the traffic lights, especially the yellow light and the zebra crossing, which is very bad. In fact, this is a very good point, because, well, there are so many issues that happen with these kinds of, and this is coming from Patrick Sigbifia in Kumasi. The N1 highway is designed to, it says, facilitate easy movement of vehicles and add up to our road network systems in the country. Accidents that are occurring on the N1 highway are due to the nature of the N1 highway, behavior of some drivers, some pedestrians not respecting road rules, and many others. This is Aaron Babako, and you are in Latvia. Kochi, thanks for that. This one is asking, what about those who cross the road under the footbridge? Yes, indeed, all of those come into play. Another problem is the bush burning on the sides of the Tema motorway. Petrol tankers ply this road every day and can catch fire. Do we always have to learn after major disasters? So obviously, it's our lack of adherence to rules and regulations which is causing all of this. But well, I'll take a break here. When we come back, we will read some more messages and then go into the Martin Amidou vetting, which would be quite an interesting conversation here. So stick and stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we are streaming live around the world on 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We'll be going on to the next topic, which is to look at the vetting of Special Prosecutor nominee, Mr. Martin Alamisi Amidu. But before that, let me announce that we've had to lose the representative of the New Patriotic Party, the ruling NPP, Mr. Kofi Abrefafna, because he's been recalled by the party. He didn't have the backing of the party to be on the show this morning, so to represent the government on the show this morning. So we are left with the able three, Kojo, Mr. Bawa and Mr. Jantua. We did actually invite Mr. Nana Damwa to join us on the NPP side, but he couldn't make it, and then we had the rep who had to step in but has had to be recalled at this point. That's for your information. But also another thing for information is that there's a blood donation exercise going on the premises of TV3 this morning. It's going to run through the rest of the day. We do invite you or encourage you to pass through to donate some blood to save a life. You never know when you may be in need of blood. Let's stock up at the relevant places, the blood bank and many other places that require blood. So please come through and we will be happy to have you go through the processes. Now we're going to the Special Prosecutor story, and we saw the vetting. Now the Special Prosecutor nominee, Mr. Martin Amidu, says he is the best man for the job. The self-acclaimed citizen vigilante says he has in the past performed a lot of scrutiny on government contracts before they were passed, and that alone is a guarantee that he's going to do a good job. Do you agree with that or not? We'll be looking at the vetting of Mr. Martin Alamisi Amidu as the nominee for the office of the Special Prosecutor. It was a thrilling interaction. Seven good hours of, back and forth between him and the Appointments Committee. We will be going to the panel very soon. So let's just take a look at what happened there. It's a brief look at what happened in Parliament on that day.
Vetting by the Appointment Committee went ahead despite an outstanding case at the Supreme Court seeking clarification on the age of the nominee and how it might contradict certain laws on public offices. As expected, the vetting started on a very high note.
In my learning and understanding, children are children. When they attain the age of majority, they legally are adults and no more children. So my understanding is that I have no control over these three adults. And if I attempt to control them, I could be in legal trouble.
If you said that children, when they graduate into adulthood, cease to be children, then you are rewriting the whole of succession laws. Then the whole of inheritance will be cancelled. And therefore, by operation of law, insofar as somebody comes out of your loins, even if it's 90 years and you are 150 years, that person remains a child and can inherit you. So, Senior, I do not share your view at all.
The nominee was not only made to defend or clarify past statements, especially articles he had published, but to speak to what made him the most suitable candidate for the post of the Special Prosecutor. There were moments where the nominee seemed either infuriated or incensed by questions from members of the committee.
I was the approval for me to go for 2 weeks and come back. And indeed, the government was interested in my program. That is what you have the Alternative Dispute Act from. That is how the judiciary came to deal with conflict resolution, right? And to improve upon it. That is why I spearheaded the National Peace Council Act into Parliament. I enriched my knowledge to be able to fulfill my duties at my own private time.
Okay, so that was Special Prosecutor nominee, Mr. Martin Alamisi Amidu, responding to a number of questions that were thrown at him. It is estimated that about 181 questions were asked during that 7-hour session. Lots of questions were asked. 181. That's what is, estimated or assessed at, that 181 questions were asked in all.
Wow. 7
hours, seriously. And you have how many people on the committee? About 25 or so. So, assuming each one of them asked even just 2 questions. Well, but that's fine.
You remember Fifi Kweti?
Honorable, start us off.
I should start.
What your view of the vetting? How did he fare?
Thank you very much. Martin Amido, first and foremost, let me congratulate him for his nomination. He comes from my region, and so I can only be happy for him in terms of that. But in terms of how he fared at the committee, I want to look at it from various angles. There were a lot of things I was not surprised about Martin Amido, because there were things that we were already aware he will... the way he was. That was just Martin Amido clear.
To be expected.
To be expected. Even though in this particular, some of the things we knew about him were exaggerated in terms of the way he came across. My first shock, actually, on when the vetting started was his exchanges with the minority leader. When the minority leader indicated that, oh, we'll have to resolve this in the Bursa way. You remember that statement? Anybody who comes from the 3 northern regions was shocked by Martin Amido's behavior. The reason is because it's a common saying within the northern sector that if you say that we want to be very serious with you today, it means that we would solve it in the Bursa way. Indeed, if you look at the northern sector, we have a lot of cultural jokes that we do to each other. And that's why even sometimes there are some cases, even though they are legal cases, 2 families from different tribes will ensure that you withdraw the case because of the history you have. I use the typical example of Honorable Ilechere, who has been in Parliament for God knows how long. I am nowhere near him in terms of experience, everything. I meet Ilechere and sometimes I look at him and tell him that, look, you are lucky that your father took you to school. You are now a pharmacist and a lawyer. You would have been following God knows what. And I make those things because culturally, the Frafra people in the Dagabes play. I remember one time I met him in the elevator. And I was with the Volta region guy, and I saw him and I said, you, what are you doing here? Get out and let's go. And the guy was shocked because he didn't expect me to say that to Elector, who was my far senior. But that is it. That is how we do to build each other. So when Haruna made that statement, it was within that context. And Martin knows about that. So for him to have reacted the way he reacted, in itself was very unfortunate. And if you ask anybody from the northern stock, everybody was disappointed. Very, very disappointed. So that's the first aspect. The second aspect was that.
But why do you think he would react that way? If
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know what the motivation is. Because particularly throughout his conversation with the committee, you realize that he consistently talked about the northern culture. He talked about he being a product of that culture and the fact that there were certain values he had imbibed in him throughout. So with that as part of his story that he was narrating to the public, we were surprised the way he behaved in terms of the reaction to the minority. But maybe because after his appointment, you know, there were a lot of controversies surrounding people making comments and other things. And he may have thought
which
that
appointments?
Well, his nomination. When he was nominated.
Yes.
Even now, even the nomination, we are confused because he himself talks about the fact that the president called him and gave him the nomination. Meanwhile, if you look at the act says that he is supposed to be nominated by the
well, as far as we're concerned,
the Attorney General did that. And then approved by Parliament. But he says that it was the president.
But you don't need to be confused because the president, in announcing that, said he's acting upon that. So let's take what the president said.
The point I'm making is that the man himself says that he got his nomination from the president, not the Attorney General. But that is for another day to discuss. So that was my first reaction on that. My other thing that I think I want to look at is some of the issues that were basically raised and his response to them. I think that one of the things that came out very clearly was the issue of his quote-unquote dismissal from government.
The Mills government.
And then a letter that was read out to him. You see, let me make a point. If you are occupying you are going to occupy a public office of that nature, people expect that you should own up to decisions that you take and be ready for them. You know that letter has a history. The history is just based on the fact that you raised some accusations against your previous, the person who was occupying your predecessor. And you said certain things that were very damning, and it meant that the president needed to act on them. Now the president decides that, look, on the basis of this, because it's based on conviction, that place, are you able to substantiate this for me? Because just writing them in themselves are not enough. So that I can put that to the, whoever you are accusing. You don't do that. Then you come back and then at the end of the day, you write an apology letter on the basis of that. And when they ask you, you say it is because you were, that letter was procured after a conversation with Kojo Chikata and then the late Professor Awono. So you are not even ready to own up to a letter that you signed yourself. And you are going into an office where integrity is very key. That is an area I looked and I saw that it was a bit worrying. The other part I saw that was a bit worrying for me was his reaction to Okudjato's question on a page in Dr. Obeda Samuel's book about him, saying that he was not going to add any value to the take it up there. To be very sincere, he had all the right to react to that particular comment. He could have reacted the way he wanted. The part that I got surprised about when he talked about the issue of boss and who was his boss and who was not his boss, because Okudjato used that word boss. And this is what he made. He indicated that the man was not his boss. He didn't pay his school fees. He didn't do this. To be very sincere, today as I speak, my boss is Haruna Idrisu because he's a minority, but he didn't pay my school fees. He didn't. I independently contested my seat and won. But he is my boss. By virtue of the structure that is put there. The fact that you had your appointment from the president does not mean that you don't have a reporting structure. So for him to have made that, for me, confirm some level of certain things. And I'll tell you, there's this unspoken truth among a lot of people about his quote unquote bitterness towards John Mahama. And all of us have always indicated that it's the big elephant in the room nobody wants to talk about. The issue is this, and it permeated in some of his statements that he made. We've always all believed the fact that he thinks, if you look at the northern stock, that he's one of the oldest cadres and other people who came from that place, from the north, and had sacrificed for the tradition. And therefore, if there was anything that had to do with who becomes what, he becomes the next person to be there. Now you have a situation where John, who comes in early 1996 from his NGO world, comes and after 2 or 3 times, he is a vice president. And before I realize he's a president. So people see that particular issue of the fact that Nkamina was a woho sort of attitude being there. And it is key, it manifested itself in the way he responded to the boss, Masterton. Particularly when he said that he was at the ministry before even Obeda Samuel came. He served under Ekins. You remember he made all those statements. He was at the ministry before this man came.
But so why do you think it's coming out of a certain bitterness he feels towards John Dramani Mahama?
No, I just look, I'm just making that it is a pattern. You realize that the fact that he thinks that MBA, Meba Hache. So
and that's your perception.
Yes,
that's what you think.
Because already this is something that I said is the big elephant in the room that nobody talks about. And people know this, people have it in their minds. But he was almost, confirming those particular issues out there. But the other part that I thought was also very interesting, and I think we needed to look at it, had to do, you realize that and that's an interesting thing that will come later.
Quickly wrap up for me, yes, and then yes, on that.
You realize that the issue of the Supreme Court case. Yes, if you look at the complainant who went to the Supreme Court, he didn't ask for an injunction, and so Parliament, in its own wisdom, felt that they could go on, irrespective of whatever happens.
Which one is this with the Dominic
case? Okay. But I mean, the interesting part of the thing, I see this thing as a missile that is coming, and I'll explain to you. It's not about mathematics. Assuming that the Supreme Court rules that Matnamidu, per his age, is not qualified to hold that office, there's an implication.
Well, yeah.
Other public officers.
Well, that's fine, but yes,
public officers. And I'm just saying, because, you know, this was something that was raised earlier on in other appointments. You have the Director General of...
But we can't really go into that because it's currently before...
No, I'm not talking about the case itself. I'm
yes.
just talking about in terms of ages. I'm just looking generally. You have the Director General of Ghana Health Service, who's in his 70s. You have the CEO of Kolebu, who is in his 70s. You have the MD of GNPC, who is also in his 70s. You have the MD of TOR, who is also in the same neighborhood. As you can say, yes, no, he's above 66. He's above 66 years. And so I am just making a point that at the time when we have no...
Sorry.
I hope these are not...
Sorry about that.
Is it at the time that we have no jobs for even the youth, people who are there, we are going back to pick retirees.
Very well. I mean,
for jobs like this, that's an issue that we can also discuss and explore.
Well, that's fine, but I think that was a cue for us to move on from you, so we can safely move on. We'll go to Kojo. Your perspectives. How did you see his the vetting? Honorable Bauer has raised a number of things. You know, people may call it a bit some contradictions in his responses in certain areas and all, but generally, what would you say?
I have always admired.
Did he present himself as the person?
I have always admired Mr. Matnamidu from far. In 1999 is the first time I actually met the man, because he used to come to a house where I lived and worked. You know, the late Honorable Hawa Yakubu from Boko was a very good friend, though they were in opposite camps. They were very close. So they sometimes meet, and when Honorable Matnamidu would come to the office to see my madam at that time, I will be there, and that's when I first met him. And I've known that the man is a man of principle from far, and all the things we all know about him. I think there is a certain level of bitterness between the man and the NDC. So when the man appeared on the panel, he had a certain angle that he was coming, and everything that the NDC would say, he had a preconceived of how to attack it.
But do you share Honorable Bauer's point that he has this bitterness towards Mr. Mahama as a person?
Well, I think, you see, if you look at the history with Mr. Matnamidu in the NDC from 99, how he became the vice nomination, how he now, you know, there is a history. I don't think we have the time to go into that.
Sure.
But there is a level of bitterness. And you see, he's the old guard, the cadres who feel that the NDC tradition stands for a certain principle. And seeing a new influx of people come in and dilute that principle and take it to a different level, he has his own reservations.
So you see it as a matter of principle,
yes,
and not the person necessarily?
I don't know, I can't infer, you know, and what my brother said was an inference from him per se, looking at what the whole thing is. I can't infer that because I don't know what he knows. But what I can say is that there is a bitterness between him and some elements within the party who he feels that are diluting the values of the party. And as a cadet and as a person who's been there from day one, he feels that certain values of the NDC, and I think him and His Excellency John Rawlings shared that common view, that the values that they fought for in 79, 81,
accountability,
and all the things they say have been stripped away. And in fact, in his mind, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama's regime doesn't stand for what they fought for. So that is to the side. But to me, let me now go to Mr. Amidu as
the nominee,
special prosecutor. They say that he's a bitter person. They say that he's temperamental. They say that, well, he's emotional. When he's emotional, he can make. But that is what me and most Ghanaians want in a special prosecutor.
Do you want a bitter person being a special prosecutor?
Yes. You know why? In Ghana, most people, when it comes to certain cases, get off on technicalities and bad prosecution. The man we will know, most Ghanaians will now sleep well that if you are found not guilty under Mr. Matnamidu's prosecution, then you are not guilty. Because at least we will be sure that the prosecution was done well. The investigation was thorough. He is not going to do favor, be it an MPP person or an NDC. That is why somebody said that the MPP is holding on to a tail of a lion.
It's nursing a lion, actually.
Yes, because basically he doesn't, no fear of favor. He will go after anybody and he will do a thorough work. So I want somebody who, when a document comes in front of him or a petition comes in front of him, the content of the petition disgusts him put him on the edge, and he has a fight in his belly to go and do for Ghana what we want a prosecutor to do.
But on the bitterness issue, don't you think that it could be problematic depending on who is on the other side of his bitterness?
Well, what's the worst he can do? He's not a judge.
So that it could
he's not a judge. He can only hunt you.
Tilt his look or his outlook towards his job.
Well, does it mean that he'll go to the court and do a shoddy work? No. If he's bitter towards you or he's bitter towards anybody, it means he'll do a good job and make sure he prosecutes you to the best of his ability. That is what we want. What I'm saying is that he could be bitter against my brother Bawa. If Mr. Bawa have not taken double salary as a minister and as an MP, then he has nothing to fear. If Mr. Bawa has not signed a voucher that he's not supposed to sign, he has nothing to fear. So if you are clean, and I gave an example earlier, in traffic, most of us don't wear our seatbelts, but the law is that you should wear your seatbelt. Then a policeman walks among all the cars that nobody's wearing a seatbelt and come to you and say, my brother, park your car. Straight away, you get upset because you're like, my brother, why are you picking on me? But you are doing something wrong. The fact that you are the one he chooses to pick on, it doesn't change the fact that you are committing something that is against the law. So to me, yes, the fight of NDC and Mr. Martin Amidu will go on for a very long time.
There's no fight.
Well, the proclaimed bitterness will go on for a very long time.
And it's on record that Mr. Martin Amidu has said that President John Dramani Mahama has, as it were, destroyed a certain impression about the North, the people from the North. That is on record, really. And that he actually said that no person from the North, because of what has happened, no person from the North stands a chance of becoming president. He said that.
So, he believes in
so
those
there
things.
Yes.
There is that belief. And to me, like I said, I mean, I was in a house full of Boko people for a very long time. So because I was the madam I worked with, everybody comes there. And I know that they have a certain principle. And
they are from Boko, actually.
Sorry?
No, he said he's
well,
not.
He said from Boko. He grew up in Boko. And so to me, I just think that it's first and foremost, he believes that the new crop of NDC members has come to dilute their beliefs that they stood for and fought for. That is what I believe.
Very well.
Before he comes, you know, now
30 seconds.
Now we are 3, so we can talk more.
Yeah, but I need to take it. 30 seconds, yes, quickly.
You see, first, there are 2 quick ones I want to make. The first one has to do with the fact that, at least at the vetting, I'm using your case, at the vetting, it came to light that not everything that Martin said was based on facts, but some were based on perception.
He says he called them what? Intelligence.
Because, listen, when he indicated publicly in his writings that John Mahama's remnants, people, some of them who were still in the agencies and the ministries and the departments, were sabotaging the current government. And they then put him to the strict proof when he came before that whether he had evidence of that. He said it was a perception.
Based on intelligence he had gathered.
Yeah,
which is,
see, that's
we'll go into that. Let me have Mr. Jantu's I will come to you. We will look at the nitty-gritties of it. So let me just take Mr. Jantu's perception or perspectives about the general, conduct of the vetting. Mr. Martin Amidu's demeanor, do you share in what has been said here? There's a certain bitterness. There's, he said openly, publicly that yes, he feels the NDC is no longer what the NDC used to be, or is not, upholding the values of the founding fathers, probity, accountability, and all of those things.
Abna, there is definitely a Dufia Assem situation between Martin Amidu and the NDC, which is they should sort it out. It is on one side of the whole argument that has come up. They should sort it out. Now, the danger for me is the word bitterness. He cannot take that emotion of bitterness into this office. Because if it's truly bitterness, then it's going to create a lot of challenges for him. Now, he made a point, which he said, and I don't want to take it as bitterness. I want to take it as a misunderstanding between he and the NDC now. Now, he made a point. He said that because of the office he has been nominated for, there is no way he can act the way he used to act in the past in terms of going to sit on the media and talk. And that since he was nominated, he has declined speaking with the media. So he recognizes exactly what the office he's been nominated 2 stands for. The NDC and Martin Amidu should try as much as possible to solve any misunderstanding, between them. Now, he made a point, and if you may permit me to quote.
Sure.
He said, "Corruption has done so much damage to this country. In conflict resolution, it is called structural violence. It is an invisible violence that kills millions without anybody seeing it." That is profound. And for him, he has a job to do. He states that corruption has no party colors. Now, if the NDC feel that because he is a member and because he has been opposed to some of the things they're saying and that he's going to come after them, the people of Ghana will be the judge. The people of Ghana will be the judge, whether he's doing the right thing or he's not doing the right thing. And the people of Ghana will rise up against him if he is doing things ultra-virus to his office. So, for me, I don't have a challenge. I don't have a problem. I think, as he said, looking throughout Ghana today, who has followed corruption the way he has done? And how meticulous he has been. And he said...
At his expense.
Yes, he has said, "I do not think I would uproot corruption. But most of all," and I'm paraphrasing, "most of all, I would want to be able to leave a legacy whereby the institution that I am representing going forward would be able to do the things it's supposed to do, and that there will be no political influence." One of the challenges we've had in this country is political influence in a lot of the institutions that are supposed to guard corruption and supposed to make sure that corruption doesn't happen. I don't have a problem with Martin Amidu. It goes to show the duration of the vetting. It goes to show that a lot of parliamentarians, a lot of people in Ghana have not complained about the duration, but the content of the questioning and the way the questioning was done.
Yes, and the response.
And the response. And you could see, and, after watching it, I said to myself, if every person who has been nominated by the president answers vetting questions the way he has done, we would have a very good nation. He was confident in what he was saying. He had the facts with what he was saying, and those he didn't have, yes, he said, "I didn't have." Now, it goes to show that he's not a perfect human being. He has, he's fallible. On the perception thing that Bawa even brought up, yes, it goes to show there's a weakness there. He cannot be perfect in anything. But overall, when it now came to the voting, it was what? 99%?
More than that.
99.9%? It goes to show that even the NDC, within their own ranks, realized that, yes, he is the man for the job.
But the NDC said that even before the vetting, they had agreed to actually approve him. At least that I heard that from Mr. Mahama Ayariga. So clearly, regardless of what happened at the vetting, session, they were going to do that anyways, because they said if they hadn't done that, if they didn't approve, it would come across as, yes, the perception out there that the NDC is afraid would be given some credibility. That's what. But we do need to take a break. We do need to take a break. When we come from the break, we'll look at that. And then also an important thing he said, which has to do with corruption, obviously, and that if Ghana were to deal effectively with corruption, we wouldn't need foreign aid. We'll look at that and then see how, moving forward, how the office is going to work. Please wrap up for me, 30 seconds, then we go for break.
Yeah, the point I was going to make was that when you look at some of the references he made in terms of his own ethnic background and the way he indicated that the elders are the ones we look to, if it so happens that you do something and even right, they would chastise you there, but when you turn your back, they would tell the elders that you do it right. And I'm being mischievous here. I might be wrong. Could it be that Martin Amidu sitting there, looking at the people interviewing him, he would say to himself, but all of you people, you are below me.
Yes. You're my children.
And that would probably have sunk into the way he answered some of the questions. The other thing is that now he's going into this position. He did indicate that where lawyers are concerned, you are not subservient to anyone. You have to stand as yourself. Now that he's going to have lawyers surrounding him, is he going to be a team leader? If one of the lawyers or one of the people there decides that what you're doing is not right and they speak against it, how is he going to take it? Well, so I looked at some of the things he was saying and referred it to his own
practically would be in his office. Very well. We'll go into those details some more when we come back from this break. You're watching and listening to New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back. But please note that the blood donation exercise is ongoing. You kindly pass through Donate a Blood, and we will be very grateful to you. And indeed, you never know when that would come in handy. You're watching New Day Saturday edition. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. This is New Day Saturday edition. We're live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7, and we're streaming live around the world online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. The conversation is going on. We'll be concluding the discussions here in respect of Mr. Martin Amidu's vetting and matters arising. But before I do that, let me remind you that the blood donation exercise is ongoing. Please pass through, donate a pint of blood or two, and you will be saving lives. We will be happy to see you here passing through to do just that. Now quickly, let's go back to the discussions. Yes, Mr. Danto, I'll come to you, but let's really introduce this, that the special prosecutor during his vetting, special prosecutor nominee during his vetting said that Ghana will not need any foreign aid if corruption is uprooted in the country. He was reacting to a question posed on Ghana's corruption stand by the vetting committee in Parliament. Let's take a listen to that particular interaction, and then we'll come back to the panel.
Corruption has done so much damage to this country. In the conflict resolution, it is called structural violence. It's an invisible violence that kills millions without anybody seeing it. Taking millions of cedis for oneself under illegal circumstances deprives people of good health, education, and all the developmental facilities you can give. So what I want to do is to be able to set up a credible institution with a credible culture, which will be able to block the leakages and the seepages. If I'm able to do that, I don't care even whether I am not able to prosecute anybody. And part of the law says that it is preventative, right? So if I can put the machinery in place to prevent these leakages and seepages, I can assure you that if we succeed, we won't need foreign aid. I will say, with knocking my chest, that the amount of seepages and leakages at the ports, if we were to close them, our budget will not need foreign assistance. And that is why I accepted this job.
There you have it. So the nominee saying that he accepted this job to help, close the leakages or the loopholes in the system, seepages and all of that, is making Ghana run this economy we are running, a deficit one that we are struggling to deal with. So clearly he's saying that if we deal with corruption, we wouldn't need foreign aid. And Mr. Jantwa, before we went on break, said he agreed. I'll go to him to conclude on what he was saying before the break and then start us off with this particular issue that Mr. Martin Amidu brought out in Parliament during his vetting.
Yes. A few things. The one thing that would make Martin Amidu fail is if his own idiosyncrasies reflect in the work he's doing.
Which is interesting, because we think his idiosyncrasies, his qualities and all of that perhaps are the right mix for the job.
Yes.
Yet you're saying we could have...
Yes.
Okay, tell us.
Nobody is
Explain.
perfect.
Yes.
his him being very temperamental to some point, the way he handles his staff. If he tries to, you know, push them, not give them respect, not give them the chance to also air their views, it will start creating challenges within that secretariat alone. And you should remember, as he said, he's not the one going to do the prosecution. Now, if it so happens that there are situations within his setup that cause his staff to agitate, then there can be challenges there. On the retirement thing, in the legal profession, when people reach a retirement age, you and I know that they can be given consultancy to continue. It could happen that if, and I don't want to be
prejudicial.
Yes, prejudicial. And I don't want to be sub judice in terms of the what you call it being in there. But if it so happens that they find that he is old and, you know, retirement age and all that, we should not allow him to do it. The government can give him a consultancy contract to continue, and that can be renewed. Currently, isn't the IGP, has he not passed his retirement age?
Yeah, but you have an opportunity per law. You have the opportunity after 60. You can have a contract for 5 years.
Not beyond 5 years.
No, you can't.
Whatever.
Yeah, so that is the law.
Whatever the case is, if it so happens that the work he's doing and the president and the people of Ghana feel he is the right person to do the job, I don't see why that should be a challenge. Yes,
but we can.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
we don't want to. Yes, exactly.
Yes,
we don't want to. Just a minute. We don't want to go into the merits of the case pending before the court.
Right.
We don't want to do that. But obviously, we want the laws to be complied with adequately.
Abna,
yes.
Let me now move on to one particular issue that I find, and the fact that I've been on PIAC for nearly 3 years. Martin Amidou is coming in to help with the corruption situation we have in this country. What about those situations where, and I will only relate it to oil revenue because that's what I know best, where oil revenue has been invested in a project in a district or in a region, and you go down there and you do not find the project there, and nobody can tell you where the money is. And it has got to do with government institutions, MDAs, MMDAs. Who takes this case to the special prosecutor? I don't think, and either of you can correct me, whether the special prosecutor is supposed to go out there and find corruption cases, or it's supposed to be reported to him.
Oh, no, you need to read the act. You see, when you read the act, it tells you that apart from the fact that he can investigate himself, cases that have been investigated, whether it is through the Attorney General, Auditor General, Yoko, what have you, as long as they are cases within the confines of the law, they can bring it to him to prosecute.
No, I'm saying
you can petition him.
Well, if nobody petitions him.
No, he doesn't need to be petitioned to take it.
Exactly.
For example, yes, he doesn't need to be petitioned to take it.
Right now, we've had a huge challenge at PIAC, where we've gone into the country having public engagements, which is part of our responsibility, and the people coming back saying to us, you've done all these investigations, you've seen all this hasn't happened. Who's going to prosecute these people? And we find that in this country, institutions don't charge themselves.
Well, the point is, looking at the Act, it clearly, I mean, to achieve the object, the office shall investigate and prosecute cases of alleged corruption and corruption-related offences under the Public Procurement Act 2003, investigate allegations of corruption. We'll come to this. We need to quickly take a look at what's happening outside on the premises of TV3, where the blood donation exercise is going on. I've been told that, yes, we need to take a shot. So we will see what is happening. So there we have live pictures, somebody offering himself to, you know, this process. Thank you so much, gentlemen. He is, currently you see him, you know, blood being drawn from him. We do appreciate that. So we are inviting you to come through, donate a pint of blood or more, and then we would refresh you thereafter to regain your energies if you should lose any, which we don't expect you to lose though, but you'll be refreshed nonetheless. So it's ongoing from now till the end of the day, I believe, and you are again encouraged to pass through. Let's help stock up the blood bank. We need to do that. You never know when it will come in handy to save a life or two. So yes, thank you for those passing through. We do appreciate that, and we do encourage others to come through as well. So back, yes. So clearly, let me just a minute. So you were asking the question. So clearly, you know.
I'm even going to say something else. I'll come back to this.
Okay, but quickly you need to wrap up for me. Then, yes.
So we are doing blood donation out there. TV3, Milo, tea, nothing for your panelists. Some of us came here at 6 a.m. No tea, nothing for us. And we are going out there to give blood. And you can't even provide Milo for us.
Oh, my
no
producers,
problem.
Please, production team, please, let's organize something really fast. Sorry about
on.
that. We'll do that.
We will still come and serve Ghana. But I think you should do something.
Thank you for your patriotism.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Yes.
Yes. There are a few things. Okay, there are a few
Are you done?
No,
you were. Please let him wrap up. I'm giving him 1 minute.
You were asking me a particular...
Exactly. You were wondering whether or not he could on his own, as in the office on their own, go and look out for these things, or they need to be petitioned first.
Yes.
They don't need to be petitioned necessarily. They can do that per the Act. Investigate and prosecute cases of alleged corruption and corruption-related offences under the Public Procurement Act 2003. Investigate allegations of corruption and corruption-related offences under the Criminal Offences Act and all of that. And of course, like Honorable Bawa said, the Auditor General's report too is a source or a basis for prosecution and all of that. So they don't need to be petitioned first.
Are we then saying that if it's hearsay that they've heard, they can go out? They can
investigate.
They can go out.
Investigate, yes.
Investigate, then prosecute.
Okay. Okay, very well. Yes, Honorable Bawa, on that, I want us to look at, quickly before we go, because we're running out of time here. Yes, he undoubtedly will be confirmed as the person for the job. But beyond, we do know that it's beyond him as a person. He needs to have the backing of various institutions, the system in general, to be able to move on. Looking at the Act, appointments of, the deputy prosecutor, special prosecutor, for instance, lies with the president. Of course, the AG would do that, and then the president does that. And then the other staff too, by the president. And in fact, then the board by the president, and all of that. Even though there are specific institutional representations, it's the president who will need to do all of that. Clearly, we need to have all of those up and running before anything substantial could happen.
And I think two of you are lawyers, am I right? That the position of the special prosecutor is a delegated power.
Yes, it is.
It is still, the thing still falls clearly under the Attorney General's department. It's just that they've delegated that function to him to do. And that's why even when it came to Parliament, initially the original bill that came was independent prosecutor, but I realized that it was in conflict with Article 88. So that's why the independent issue took off. So in the first place, I know that the mentality, and I got that vibe when Amiri was before this and what do you call the committee. He is not as independent as he thinks he is. He is not. And that's the truth of the matter. Because actually, you people, you call it a knowledge prosecutor, is that it? I'm wondering that if you have a situation, and I think that question came up, that you are prosecuting a case, and then the Attorney General decides to enter into that. What do you do? Your hands are tied. The board is supposed to give broad policy guidelines as to the function of and the role of the special prosecutor. If the policy guidelines do not, in a way, tend to limit his ability to work, how does it resolve that? Because it would have been permissible within the law because they provide those things. So this whole animal called special prosecutor is not a panacea in itself. But indeed, there was something you raised about the corruption issues and what the effect it has on us when he spoke about it. Yes, if you look, if you steal 1 cedi, 2 cedis, 3 cedis, it may be that money could have helped in putting up a clinic in a village. Indeed, I think I saw one of the documents of Imani where they said that annually, I don't know how scientific that is, but annually, Ghana loses about $3 billion a year to corruption. And so if you have 3 billion, you can imagine what you can do with 3 billion. And so any attempt by the state to ensure that we keep this canker is welcome. That is the thing. Now, but the other issue I need, and I know we are closing this and going to a very important, and going for a very important thing about the tax.
Yes.
one of the things I want to talk, and because it was Kojo Poku who was bringing this up, I do not want people to think that NDC, one of the reasons why NDC decided that we were going to approve Matnamidu was that we felt that if, after all, in fighting corruption, the state could find one of our own to be the best person to fight corruption, it meant that it was a plus for us as a party.
Right.
That's one aspect.
Which is what we thought from the beginning,
Yes,
but
and
earlier on there was some issues
that
with
was
that.
the impression people had. But for us,
was it an impression?
It wasn't an impression.
No, but our very actions in Parliament suggest that we are
maybe in Parliament, but not.
Look, let me tell you, that's the thing. The other part I needed to talk about, and for me it was funny. And when you talked about the NDC and the fact the dilution, you remember you made the values. If you look at NDC is a Congress. It's a Congress because, and we deliberately use the word Congress for a reason. The NDC is made up of a stock of the revolution, that's the cadres. We have the UP portion that was led by the DF Anan, Obeda Samuel and Co. Then we have the Nkrumahs. So you have these three sets, an amalgamation of three different sets of thinking that came together to form that Congress. Of course, there can be conflict in terms of how we think the party should move. And it is not alien to any serious political party. You will have those things. But there was an interesting part that Matnamidu said. And for me, coming from the Keda stock, I was surprised about it. When he was talking about corruption, he indicated that, look, we must ensure that we do not create an environment for an opportunist to take guns and come again to seize power. Again to take power. The first question I asked myself, the very reason why Rawlings came back after 79, came back in 81, was on the basis of the fact that he felt there was corruption.
But that is, he also stated it.
No, I'm coming.
Yes,
I'm coming.
Please allow him to land and then we can respond.
So there was corruption. My simple question, does he see the act of Rawlings and whoever was involved in that as political opportunism? That's the only question I'm going to ask. Because for me, I see it from an angle of, if you listen to what Rawlings says, if you listen to what Matnamidu has said earlier, it was all because the intervention was necessary to save this country. It was not because of the fact that.
So are you saying that it was justified? It was okay to overthrow a constitutionally elected government?
From what Matnamidu said, it was not right.
Why wasn't it right?
From what Matnamidu, he saw it as a political opportunity.
But it is.
He says, don't create opportunity, as in
don't create an environment for a political opportunist.
Yes.
To take over this country again.
Yes.
Again.
As in, don't create, because if you're saying the overthrow was because of the corruption, people thought they had to intervene. Let's not create that environment for that intervention.
Yes. So then, the question then you ask yourself, did we need to do the 1981 coup?
Yes, but clearly that question for me is it was just a no-no. It was just a no-no.
Because for me, he created an impression.
I'll come to you.
He created an impression.
I know.
No, excuse me. He created the impression that the intervention in the 1981 coup to overthrow a constitutionally elected government was wrong.
Yes. But it was wrong.
Yes. So it means that he's a party to that.
But he was wrong.
So it's an admittance of the fact that that action was wrong.
Yes.
Clearly.
Okay.
And it wouldn't be bad if he agrees, because he says he is an advocate of the Constitution, and I wouldn't expect an advocate of the Constitution to justify that act.
So it means that.
So for me, I think
yes. I just wanted it to be on record. As somebody who is a strong supporter and a defender of.
Relax, gentlemen. Please, just a minute. Kojo, I'll come to you. 1 minute.
Just 1 minute.
Mr. Janswa.
Every coup in this country that has happened has been wrong. Every coup. And why do I say that?
Unjustified.
The coups, have they changed the economy of this country?
Oh, yes. And to add to that,
positively or negatively?
Positively.
No,
how? Actually, if you look at the 1981 coup, at the time when even GDP was going negative in this country, It only took a military intervention to reverse that under the economic recovery program. So you can't say otherwise.
The records are there. We don't have that time to go into all of those.
The records are there.
So please,
the records are there for us.
Honorable,
at the time we were growing negatively.
How can you hold your horses? No, Mr. Jantua. Please,
I totally disagree.
This will take it will veer us into some other conversation altogether. We
don't
have, but we just need to go on.
The
but the point is, just to
he's
come in.
Probably seeing the right thing
Fantastic.
now.
That's what I think too.
He's seeing the right thing now.
Rollins
school was young.
Let me go to Kojo. No, Mr. Jantua. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. No.
I agree.
You're good.
You know the point I'm making.
It's a different conversation.
The reason why I am making this point was to just tell you the contradiction of the person.
Very well. That's fine.
It's a contradiction.
It's a contradiction. That's fine. Let me go to Kojo.
I don't think we should entertain this conversation. Because you have a CPP traditionalist and you have a cadet, and this conversation can go on till 10 years.
Exactly.
Because, I mean, if I'm to get into it, I will also have my own view of what I think is wrong.
Please, don't listen. Please, allow him to speak. Allow him to speak. He's a free radical.
Why am I being now put on the kukudu set today?
Carry on.
Now, so please, I don't want to go into that. I think that, look, let's wish Mr. Martin Amidu well.
That's the most important.
He has worked in the Attorney General's office. He's a seasoned lawyer, and I'm sure he's worked with staff, people, and he's done good prosecutions in this country, and nobody he has worked with has come out openly to say that, oh, the man didn't work well with me. We've not had that side of him. So I think the office will be staffed. I'm sure he will listen to diverse opinions. There are very sharp lawyers out there, young, brilliant guys out there that he can see himself in them growing up, and he can empower them, and we'll have a good... For me, Ghana wins, because I know for a fact that if Mr. Martin Amidu prosecute you and you are not guilty, I, Kojo Poku, will go to sleep knowing that you are not guilty.
Very well. Let me take some messages and then we go into the petroleum tax reduction. This one is saying, good morning, Abna. Why is the president so quick to pass the special prosecutors bill but not in a hurry to pass the right to information bill, which could have helped the special prosecutor in performing his duties? That's called Sami and Nima. Another one says, Abna, I have no doubt about Mr. Martin Amidu's credibility and competence, but the question is, will the NPP bigwigs allow him to do his work? That's a question you're asking. Musa Abatwa in Kumasi says, now for me, Martin Amidu has lost credibility. How can a man who's heading to the most important position as far as the fight against corruption is concerned criminalize people based on perception? Is he going to act based on information, intelligence, and perception, not evidence and fact? As a rational thinker, I think he's not fit for the job. I'm a citizen, not a spectator. Good morning, Abna. The bottom line is that he, Martin Amidu, is one of the people who campaigned for NPP, and he said he contributed to the NDC loss. So his payback time, how can he say his perceptions? I'm sorry, I can't. It's not clear what you're trying to say. Too bad. For the Honourable Bar to link Martin's answer on what Dr. Obed Asamoah said about his suitability, then to his bitterness towards John Mahama is absolutely ridiculous. There's no relationship between his answer and the so-called bitterness he has for John Mahama. If I were in his shoes, I would have reacted the same way as Mr. Martin Amidu did, especially when his credibility and suitability for the NDC ticket in 2020 was questioned by Dr. Obed Asamoah. And this is Mohammed in Medina. Thanks for your messages. I'll have to pull the brakes on here. There are quite a number of them, but we need to move on to look at the other two remaining topics. Petroleum tax reduction is what we are going into now. Kojo, this special petroleum tax was introduced in 2014 for a certain purpose.
2015.
2015, sorry. And people argue that the reason why we perhaps introduced this, which had to do, predominantly with volatility in oil prices, the situation no longer persists. So why are we still, paying this?
I hope you give me a bit of time to educate, because a lot of people don't understand this tax. Okay. In 2015, world market crude oil prices were around $100 and was tumbling. In other countries, when crude oil price goes down, there's a direct relation between the crude oil price and your finished products.
Right.
So when crude oil price goes down, your ex-pump or ex-refinery goes down. In Ghana, we were supposed to have come down all the way. In my estimation, I even said that at that time we should go to about 11 cedis per gallon. Then at that time, there was this FX losses and this energy sector debt, which Mr. Asaga, Honorable Asaga at MPA and the government of the day felt that, look, since prices are so low, instead of giving Ghanaians the whole reduction in the ex-pump, let's put a tax so that when the increases of world petroleum prices go back up, we will now take that tax back up. Now, that tax...
You're shaking your head. I'll come to you.
Well, he was there, so he could give us a perception on why they introduced the tax, because he was there. So I would like to hear what he said. But to me, I was on platforms with Honorable Asaga, and that is how he explains it, that they are introducing the 30%, the 17% tax at that time, 17.5 tax at that time, because Ghanaians could afford to pay a little bit more now that the price of petroleum has come down so low, because it came as low as $30 per barrel, okay? And we said that, look, why would you do that? Let Ghanaians get the full benefit of the fall, so that if world market price is $30, let it reflect at our pump. But no, at that time, the 17.5 tax was introduced.
But being a net importer of oil, you would also need to address issues about revenue, because then you need to get in revenue from the export of oil. But because of the low prices, we wouldn't have the revenues we expected, so we would want to show it
exactly. And also the main bane of that was the FX losses and the energy sector, the BDC debt and all that, to pay for that. So that tax was introduced. Then it was calculated 17% of ex-depot price, okay? Then over the months and years coming now, the price has started going up. So it's gone up to about $65 and stuff like that. And the think tanks and everybody saying that, look, this tax that was introduced for when prices were low no longer makes sense. So please take it out, because it was not meant to be a permanent tax.
It served its purpose.
It served its purpose when it was introduced. And even to make that worse, there's ESLA, okay, which is now also collecting revenue to pay the energy sector debt. So why still keep that 17? So MPP in opposition says, well, the nuisance tax, when they'll come, they'll take it out. First budget, they took out 2%. Second budget, they looked away. Then I, in my opinion, felt that, look, they did not meet an economy that they felt had enough money, so they need to do revenue mobilization. So they want to keep that tax to generate revenue for the country. I don't have a problem with that. But tell us, as Ghanaians, we deserve that our government tell us what their intentions are. Say to us that, look, I'm going to need this tax for the next 2 years, 3 years. I will phase it out by 2020. I am 100% agree that tax being kept there permanently, because the third debt recovery levy has now come to stay, and it has been collapsed into something else in our tax price build-up, as if we are supposed to be paying that, but it's not. So then there was an agitation, there was a demonstration. Then I come to hear that there's a 2%. And I'm thinking, why?
Gradually.
No, but Abna, let me ask this question. Was the government acting for acting's sake, to appease us the Victorian style, when those days in the Victorian Queen Victoria time, people come with stakes at the back of the wall, they will give them a grain of rice to go, only to find out that after the grain of rice, they will come back and ask for more. Or they were acting to solve the woes of Ghanaians. If you are acting to solve the hardship of Ghanaians, then that 2% is awfully inadequate.
So you think it's much ado about nothing?
It's like putting a plaster on a stomach ache. And to insult us more, they now say that they are changing the valerium aspect of it, the percentage of it, to make it at now 46 pesos per liter. Which means that, tax. Yes. So now, if the prices go down,
you're still paying that.
You're still paying 46 pesos. If it was valerium, as in a percentage, if the prices go down, we would have paid less. Yes. So now, in a way, they are going to now take more money from us in terms of that. Now, let me tell you what happens.
Quickly, then I know when we...
you now kept that 2%. Last year, in 2016, we imported 2017.
So, okay.
We imported about 3.5 billion liters of petrol, both diesel and I'm only using diesel and petrol, about 3.5 billion. The 7 pesos, because the 2% translates to 7 pesos, because it was 53 pesos, now it's 46 pesos. So the change in the price is 7 pesos. If you multiply 7 pesos by the 3.5 billion liters that we imported last year, government would have made 245 million Ghana cedis, which is about $54 million. That is the money that government would have gotten in its coffers to do development, to do the Western Railroad or whatever the government wants to do. But you've now given this 2% to individuals to come to us at disposable income. Let me tell you what that translates to a disposable income. If you buy 1 gallon, it's 28 pesos. If you buy 10 gallons, it's 28 Ghana cedis. To me, what is 28 Ghana cedis in terms of the grand scheme of things that we are looking for? So, you know, I want Ghanaians to understand that we expect our government, if you cannot reduce it now, tell us. In your next budget, then you do something major for us to appreciate. You're saying
they shouldn't have bothered with the 2%
They shouldn't have,
at
because
all.
you see, why I have a problem with that is that when you have agitation, demonstration and all those things, and you go and do something, are you doing it because you want to be seen as doing something?
They have a listening ear.
No, but are you listening? Are you listening to do something meaningful for us, or you are just being seen to act? That is my problem.
Very well, that's fine. Honorable Barra, quickly.
Okay.
This was introduced during your tenure.
Yes.
For a specific purpose.
Yes.
So why didn't it have that outlook in the act that yes, after a certain period, we leave it, but it's there continually and we are being, just as the tour did,
when you bring
forever on our books.
If you bring any bill to Parliament to be passed into an act, there's always a memorandum accompanying it. The memorandum gives you the rationale behind the introduction of that law. The memorandum that accompanied this particular tax was based on this. In 2015, when we read the budget, the benchmark crude price that CETEPE used was $60 per barrel. You remember at that time, crude price was around 90 thereabout. That at least if we had $60 per barrel, our petroleum revenue for the budget, to fund the budget in 2015, would be okay.
So much.
Then we had collapse of commodities prices, particularly oil and the metals. We came down to as low as $28 per barrel. So it made sense that we introduced this SPT, Special Petroleum Tax. The idea was to augment the shortfall of the petroleum revenues. At that time, when this particular tax was introduced, I remember very clearly the minority then, led by Honorable Chairman Sabunsu, staged a walkout. They said it was obnoxious, it was inimical to the growth of Ghanaians, and that to a very large extent, it could only come from a man with a devilish heart. These were the descriptions of this tax when it came in 2015. Fast forward. You had indicated also clearly that if you were to win an election, you were going to scrap this. You didn't even give conditions. This one in 2017, you won the election. So people expected, and that's what Kojo Boko was talking about. People expected that the 17.5% would be reduced. You didn't. You rather reduced it to 15%. We spoke about it and reminded you of the social contract you had with Ghanaians when you indicated that you were going to do this. Now in 2018, the conditions are not the same.
But let me add just for context as well. But in 2017, when they read their first budget, they did reduce it 2%. It's just for...
No, but I indicated that. Yes. I said it came from 17.5 to 15%. Yeah. I indicated that. Then in 2018, your benchmark crude price that you have pegged in the 2018 budget is $57.5. As we speak now, as at this morning, when I was coming, the crude oil is around $62. It means that even your revenue projection, you will exceed it if prices stay as the way they are. So the conditions under which you still keep the special petroleum tax do not exist. And that's why COPEC, the drivers and others were asking that you should take it off. Besides that, you know, when Kojo Boko was talking about the pricing and other things I was making, there's yet another levy known as the price stabilization levy. The price stabilization levy is this. If I were to buy petrol 1 liter, I pay 12 pesos on it. If I buy diesel, I pay 10 pesos. If I buy a unit of what they call it, LPG, I pay 10 pesos. The idea of this particular levy is that any time prices are escalating, and you know the 3 factors that affect us. We have the dollar, we have the crude oil prices, and of course the taxes. These are the 3 things. So anytime the prices are going up, then this particular levy kicks in to be able to stabilize prices. We have this there. People are not protesting against this. People are asking that today, if I were to go to the pumps to buy a petrol, maybe petrol worth 10 Ghana cedis, I pay almost 5 cedis as tax. The tax build-up is between 49 and 50%. So all they are saying is that since the conditions for the SPT do not exist, take that off to reduce the tax burden, because we know you don't have control over the international crude prices. Of course, you have control over the dollar CD exchange rate, but at least that one is a bit volatile for some time now. But at least you have control over the taxes, particularly when you introduce this tax at a particular time that you said it was because the prices were down. But the more serious aspect, and I say it because I'm a politician, when I mentioned the issue of the social contract, you smiled. If you go on a political platform and you tell people that vote for me, and if you vote for me, this is what I'll do for you, and the people honor that side of the contract and vote for you, you are bound morally to abide by that. So the very action of the current government is immoral. It is a threat to democracy, because at the end of the day, people will begin to realize, you know, they cheat. And when you ask some of them, they will tell you that, look, I'm not
of course.
You understand? And so they make that.
You campaign in prose and govern in, is it poetry and govern in prose? So clearly.
But the point is that the moment you do that, it will get to a point that people will no longer be excited about the political process. And that is the danger that we find.
Quickly, before I move to Mr. Jantua, but the question still remains. This was, if you like, a special vehicle, a special purpose act.
Yes.
Why didn't the act have a sunset clause? So that then the subsequent government, exactly, you just leave it.
But in another case,
and then
but
before you come, you continue, because clearly there's the need to also raise revenue. So government looking at things would say, well, let's just see how best we can generate revenue. But if you had put in a sunset clause, yes, I mean, laws can be amended and everything, but at least there would be that.
Why would I have saved?
It would have made it clear that this is for a certain specific period.
Let me give you a typical example of a law that has a sunset clause in it.
But isn't working.
The ESLA, the sunset was in Kigor 5 years. It has been changed to 10 years because
exactly. That's what I'm saying. That it can be amended. But at least it's there.
At least it's there. So we know that in 10 years.
Yes. So the point I'm making is this. That's why I went back to the memorandum that accompanied the bill.
My producer is telling me to explain the sunset clause. Okay. So basically,
there's a termination point.
Yes.
That if you introduce the law, there's a termination point at a particular point in time. The law ceases to exist unless they come back to
its purpose.
Yes. Unless they come back to Parliament to renew it.
Exactly.
So basically that is it.
Very well.
So the point I'm just making is that, you see, the memorandum explained it, but there was a principal position that the MPP took when they were a minority. It is that principle we are holding them to.
Very well, that's fine. Let me come to Mr. Jantua here on this issue. And I'm happy Honorable Bar made reference to the price stabilization under the ESLA, because clearly there is that provision. And I mean, for purposes of this conversation, I would want to read it so we know exactly what it is. That under, it says the price stabilization and recovery account, section 5 of the Energy Sector Levies Act. It says the minister shall cause to be opened and maintained an account to be known as the price stabilization and recovery account for the purpose of receiving monies realized from the price stabilization and recovery levy. And 2, monies in the price stabilization and recovery account shall be used A, as a buffer for under recoveries in the petroleum sector, and B, most importantly, to stabilize petroleum prices for consumers. There's a third one, but for this conversation is the B that I'm interested in, to stabilize petroleum prices for consumers. Why aren't we seeing that happen, but rather consumers being overburdened?
You know, Abna, I would wish this government in power would stop me from using that phrase that I tend to try and use all the time. The value is the same. The value is the same. The NDC brought in this particular tax because at the time oil prices were at a certain level that made it difficult for the budget to operate. You have come into power. You are getting more than what the oil price is now as compared to what you've got in the budget. Scrap it. If you would not scrap it, put a clause in there where you would stay this particular tax and only bring it up if it affects our budget to some degree. But who was it? Bawa who was talking about promises.
They
also made promises. They also made promises that they broke.
But we are discussing.
No, we are not discussing. We are discussing. We are discussing Ghana. We are discussing Ghana. We are not discussing. You know, this kind of diversion and things that the opposition sometimes make. Sometimes it's too laughable, because you've been in power, and some of the things that we are discussing now came from you, and you did nothing about it. And so when we are discussing these things, we are talking about governance and how governance should be handled. Look, what determines a change in oil prices? Let's see whether those situations are in here today. Depreciation of the cedi. Has the cedi depreciated so badly? Huge taxes. High level of inflation. Is that present today? Current oil price fluctuations in the country, largely due to poor performance of the local currency in the forex market. Are we experiencing that today? If we were to take just these conditions, can we not say that the government in power today should look at this tax again? They should be able to, because it's putting too much pressure on the ordinary Ghanaian. Perhaps it's not putting pressure on the politicians and the parliamentarians and those who can afford it. For them, it's just another 10. PIAC, we are a body that investigates how oil revenues have been used. And even that, we have realized that that money hasn't been used properly. And so, coming back to this, I believe that we've got to a stage where when such things happen, there are cushions in the law that allow the government to pull its reins back, but also allow the government to push the horse forward when things change. Because the other side of the coin is that if this particular tax is removed, and for some want of something that we have no control over, America attacks North Korea, that would now create a challenge for us. And it means we have to now go back to Parliament to now reinstitute these things. Yes, this tax that you talked about, is it enough anyway to cushion when major challenges happen? So we should look at it properly. I believe that we shouldn't scrap it wholeheartedly, but we should stay it for now, because we are making excess with petroleum prices. They're making excess. So let's stay it, and let's have the situation where, you know, we can bring it back when. So
as a need arises, then we go back to it, so we avoid the whole process of reenacting it. Quickly, and then we take.
I want to take off from where my brother left off. You see, governance is, to me, that's one thing I had a problem with MDC when they govern. They like to do things as if you want to give me paracetamol, but you won't tell me what you are giving me to take. Just take it, you'll be well. I'm asking you what is it, you're not telling me. And I think MPP is beginning to do the same. They tend to do things without, exactly, they are not communicating to Ghanaians what they are doing. Look, I will support, I told Duncan when they went to commission, look, my brother, we need the revenue. Because look, the economy is not in the footing where we can start giving away certain things. So if government needs the revenue, come and tell us.
Which is what then the minority would remind you that. So why were you making those promises?
I understand that, but you see, my point is this, look, the grass always looks green on the other side. So if you're in opposition, you think you can do better, you can drive Formula 1 until they give you a car at Monaco. Then you realize that you can't drive it. But the point is, let me quickly just finish what I'm making. In the next pricing window, listen, in the next pricing window, there's going to be like a 7% reduction at the pump from the 1st of March, okay? And that would also go a long way to cushion.
That depends on how soon they can take it to Parliament for them to ratify.
The 2% has been done, but the next pricing window from the 1st of March, because crude oil prices have gone down by 6%, the ex-pump will come down about 7%, and that is already in the indicative prices of all the OMCs, but it's effective from 1st. No, it's been done. So the next pricing window is 1st of March. So effective 1st of March, it's going to be a 7% reduction. But you see, my point is that if government had waited, you would have this 7% coming soon. So you didn't have the need to rush and try to be seemingly doing something for Ghanaians. You understand? So it is that idea of, yes, we need the revenue. Our brothers who left the NPP will tell you that they didn't meet a good economy, so they need a revenue. Well, some of us agree that they need a revenue to do all the potholes there is. But tell us what you intend to do.
Very well.
And we'll support you.
I think I'll take Honorable. I'll give you a few minutes to finish, so that when we come back, we go straight to the Zuma story. Quickly wrap up for me.
We can't just hide behind the fact that because somebody else did it. The reason why I'm in opposition today is because of the fact that I was told that this tax was inimical to Ghanaians. As one of the reasons why I'm in opposition today.
Why your party is in opposition?
Yeah, that's why I'm in opposition. I wanted to be in the majority, but I'm in the minority. So, on the basis of that, I have learned my lessons and I'm telling that these are the conditions under which you came. So meet them. That's the first thing. But you see, the reaction of the government and the institutions within the petroleum sector is what is laughable. You remember when COPEC went on the demonstration, you had the CEO of NPA come out to indicate that the figures for the price stabilization had been reduced. The 12% had been reduced to a particular number. And I asked myself, he's a lawyer by profession. Under what law? There has not been any review, because we knew he was not speaking the truth. There has not been any review in Parliament. You have not brought any document asking for a review of those documents. But because you wanted to react to what the people were doing on the streets, that's why I agree with you when you said that the demonstration is what had pushed these people quickly into Parliament. Because the first reaction was to say that, hey, no, we have reduced the price stabilization levy.
But that's why people demonstrate, isn't it?
No.
To get results.
No, I'm listening to one. Their first reaction was that they had done that. Then when we reminded them that, under what law did you do that? Because it is not true. We still pay the 12 pesos on a litre of petrol, 10 pesos on diesel, and then on LPG. Then the next thing they came with this under the certificate of agency. And you know the interesting part, the part that brought about the confrontation between the speaker and Haruna Idrisu, the minority, was that we passed this particular law when we were only 32 in the House. We didn't even have a quorum. And when we were raising this issue, that we didn't have a quorum on the floor of the House, he wanted to raise that issue. Mr. Speaker ignored him. So in strict sense of the word, this law that was amended under the certificate of agency was done with that quorum in Parliament.
Which raises issues on its own. Anyways, we need to take a break. When we come back, we go to look at happenings in South Africa with President Zuma's resignation and the coming into office of President Cyril Ramaphosa. You're watching NewDay Saturday edition. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is NewDay Saturday edition, live on TV3, also live on 3FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com, also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. We have just about 10 minutes to wrap up here, so quickly we'll do this. We're looking at the happenings in South Africa where the immediate past President Jacob Zuma had to resign following pressure from his party, the ANC. And then stepping into his shoes now is Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, deputy president at the time, and also the leader of the ANC. Interesting happenings. Mr. Janto, I'll start with you on this one. The politics there in South Africa is quite interesting. They have a certain governance system which is definitely different from ours, but unique, yes. It's actually, it's a blend of the presidential and parliamentary and all of that. So it's quite interesting. But there are definitely lessons we can draw from. Looking at what has happened with Zuma, this is the second time the party has had to recall president. It happened to Thabo Mbeki, now to Zuma. And clearly, ANC had backed Zuma throughout his various scandals, throughout his, the allegations upon allegation, and they stuck with him. But at this point, they had to, pull the plug. What could have accounted for that? What changed?
I think looking at that part of Africa, Zimbabwe, South Africa, and one or two of them, that system is in place. Because you saw what happened to Mugabe.
Yep.
It was the party that put pressure on him to stand down. You saw what happened in South Africa. It asks the question, if you do not have a strong opposition, as you can see with ANC and in Zimbabwe, the party tends to dictate, irrespective of the fact that it's the people who have voted that individual into power. Now, your question was, again,
Basically, what happened? What could have changed now that ANC, after all this, the defense for Zuma now pulling the plug?
The perception of corruption within Zuma's reign was one of the major things I can see. I could be wrong, but that is what I saw. His relationship with the Guptas, who was supposed to be this influential family, and the kind of contracts that these Guptas were handling, the relationship with his own siblings, his own family members, who seemed to be part and parcel of, giving out a lot of these contracts, probably tipped the balance a bit. And people were quite fed up. And the perception of he himself being corrupt, using a certain huge amount of money to refurbish his own private premises, the people couldn't take it anymore, and they felt that this was the time to go. Now, Zuma himself, and I watched his interview before he went to make the announcement. His challenge was that the people have voted a president into power. You as a party cannot just come and usurp that power and say, I should step down, because I was put there by the people.
But isn't that a derivative of the parliamentary system which they have? It's a hybrid, right? So the party in parliament that has the predominance in parliament, dictates, as it were. So and Zuma is the leader, or up until December 2017, he was the leader of the ANC.
Yes.
Right? And so given their circumstances or their system, they can do that.
Yes.
So recall, and that's what happened with Thabo Mbeki as well when Zuma became the ANC leader.
And now what has created that was the system that was in place before the ANC now was able to raise the apartheid system.
As in post-apartheid.
Yes, and it didn't create a credible opposition to the ANC. Zimbabwe the same. When what was the
ZANU-PF.
No, not ZANU-PF. The white guy, Rhodesia, when they were in power, and both Smith, when ZANU-PF and all the others came together to fight the Smith regime, when he was now taken off, ZANU-PF became a strong party in there without any
serious opposition.
opposition.
Very well.
Now the question you then ask, will it happen in West Africa?
That's the thing, and which I go to Honorable. Could I come to you?
I don't think it can happen in West Africa.
Quickly. In both instances, the person who came in is the vice president. If
one of the deputies,
if the Zuma's wife had won the Congress, could they have just sworn him indirectly, or they would have gone for election?
That's what I want to tell you and then she drew attention. Zuma was the vice president in 2005 when the corruption scandal hit him over his financial director, advisor. And he was sacked. He was actually sacked. So he was actually not the vice president at the time he came into. But when he was made the leader, and later on Thabo Mbeki was recalled, he was made the president. So I think the presidency is to the party. It's to the party. So the moment you win the leadership of the nation, then you get that. I think that is
that's their system. Exactly.
That's basically the thing. But maybe just to continue with my submission on that. I think Zuma, personally, I was one person who, when he came to office, I was excited about him for one reason.
Grassroots person.
Apart from grassroots person, that he surmounted a lot of challenges and became what he was. He has never had his formal education.
Oh yeah.
He's never had that, and still was able to self-educate.
That is neither here.
Yes, I'm trying to.
But those are some things you think are well.
And I thought that he still found a way of ensuring that he could school himself to rise up to the highest position. So he was somebody I admired. But from his role as a vice president and the scandals that started going around him, it was very clear that this man, from day one, they say the way the disco starts, that's the way to end. The man, there was a clear indication that he was corrupt. He was fired as a vice president. People thought that it was not true. They dropped the cases. He came back and became a president. The issues came again. He talked about the Guptas. He talked about the renovation of his house, about even some mansion also in Dubai, and a lot of other issues around him, interfering into the national national prosecution authority, to the extent and even when Cyril Ramaphosa was talking, one of the things he spoke about was that there was a problem with and that's what I'm talking about, a special prosecutor, the National Prosecution Authority, that the leadership there had a challenge and that they needed to look at it also. I think that I admire South Africa for one thing, that at least Africans can resolve their issues without necessarily having to go resort to violence. They used demonstrations, that was legitimate, it was a tool within their constitution. They used negotiations to be able to talk to the man, to be able to step down, and they did it without losing life. And for me, that is the source of pride I have. I just hope that going forward, South Africa being a country, but over a period of time, until recently, where they had about 2%, they were even in recession. They were in recession.
And currently it's in a bad state, really.
They had huge power crisis. Indeed, at the time we were experiencing Dumso, they were equally experiencing huge problems when it came to issues of power. And so I think that with Cyril Ramaphosa, and Cyril Ramaphosa is somebody, when I was growing up, even as a kid, when I heard the name Cyril Ramaphosa, I admired him. I admired him with his beard and the way he used to behave. And so I just hope and pray that he will be a man of integrity. I liked him when the issues of the mining, the shooting scheme, even though he was sitting on that board, he handled it so well and took responsibility that this was a dent on their own image. I need to move on to
Kojo because our time is up quickly.
What I would say is that it's a lesson in politics.
Can we see that happen in Ghana anytime
soon?
It's a different system, yes, I know, right? It's a different system, I know.
What I want to say is not even what you guys are saying, is that a popularist person is not necessarily a good ruler or a good person to rule a country. Zuma was a popularist. Everybody liked him because he was a grassroots person. Governance
and they used to compare him and Thabo being made to look bad.
It's a whole complete different ballgame. In economy, what you put in is what you get out.
Totally.
It might not come out immediately, but in 4, 5, 6 years, something has to come out. South Africa had nothing going in because, yes, he was a popularist person. He didn't have any agenda. He didn't have any constructive policy. He didn't have any.
He was a people's president.
So you could now say that as a lesson of, as tutors and as observers of politics, we should advise ourselves that we should not necessarily put popularist person or charismatic people in leadership position hoping that magic will happen.
Speaking of that, I mean, it turns our attention to what happened in Liberia recently with George Weah's election. I hope to God that he brings massive change there.
But if Georgia had come in when Shirley came in, there would have been a problem. But Georgia in the last 12 years has learned. He has transformed from what he was just coming out of a popularist footballer to a very, I think people will see the difference. So I think for Africans,
he needs the right people around
him. Everybody needs the right people around him. If one person can't do all the work unless you are a dictator.
All too soon, gentlemen. Our time is up. This is all the time we have for today's discussion. We hope you enjoyed it. I've had I've been honored to have Mr. Kojo Nsafu-Apoku, Edward Bauer, Honorable Member of Parliament, Mr. Kwame Jantwa, do this program. And thank you to you, gentlemen, for your contributions. Thank you to you, listeners and viewers as well. We do appreciate your messages that you send through. Let me remind you again that the blood donation exercise is ongoing. Please pass through, donate a pint of blood or two, and help save a life. That will be coming on live after the sports show very soon on TV3. Until we see you next week, my name is Abna Tepe. Do have yourselves a very good weekend and a very productive week. Bye-bye.